Recap. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter Weather 95, Chapter. In the desolate expanse of the ancient battlefield, where the air itself trembled with the remnants of forgotten power, 7 prodigies once stood as the pinnacle of the younger generation. Yet among them, Wu Jie had always been the weakest link, a king tier in name, but lacking the overwhelming dominance of the others. And it was precisely this weakness that had invited calamity. For the shadow that now dwelled within him had not chosen blindly. To seize a body was to defy the will of heaven itself, and even a being of terrifying power dared not act recklessly. A weaker vessel meant less resistance, a higher chance of success. Wu Jie had been the perfect target. But now, surrounded by 6 king tiers, that same perfect vessel seemed destined to be destroyed in an instant, or so they thought. Weng, 6 overwhelming attacks descended like falling stars, tearing through the air with killing intent. Yet Wu Jie merely lifted a hand, calm, almost lazy, and pushed outward. An invisible force bloomed into existence. The attack struck and vanished as though swallowed by an unseen abyss. A sinister smile curled across Wu Jie's lips. "Be patient," he said, his voice no longer his own, laced with an ancient malice. "Allow me a moment to grow accustomed to this body. Then I will send each of you to your deaths." The 6 prodigies froze, their hearts shaken. This was impossible. The ancient restrictions of this realm were absolute. Any power beyond the sun-moon tier would be crushed instantly. Yet the force Wu Jie had just displayed clearly surpassed the mountain-river tier. So why had the heavens not struck him down? "Heh!" Wu Jie chuckled, though his face was now veiled in a writhing black aura. "This is not power. This is the Dao itself. These are regulations." His voice deepened, ancient and prideful. "In life I stood at the very brink of the eternal river tier. One step more and I would have touched the Genesis tier. Do you truly believe mere ants like you can comprehend my mastery of the heavens?" As he spoke, his body twisted unnaturally. Crack, crack, crack! Bones shifted, flesh reshaped. His form began to warp as though moulded by unseen hands. Spikes burst forth from his back like jagged blades. A single horn grew from his forehead, gleaming with a faint silver glow. His frame expanded, towering, monstrous. His skin darkened into patchy layers etched with natural divine patterns, as if the heavens themselves had branded him. Had Wu Jie's original consciousness still lingered, he might have rejoiced. Once the weakest, now standing alone against 6 king tiers, and not only enduring but doing so effortlessly, a feat that would have crowned him unrivaled beneath the heavens. But Wu Jie was already gone. "Shatter him!" Ling Han roared. 6 figures moved as one. Though the being before them had once been unimaginably powerful, now only a remnant soul remained. Worse still, it was bound to a mountain-river tier body. No matter how profound his understanding of regulations, his foundation was flawed. And they, each of them, stood at the absolute peak of their generation. Even in the vast immortal realm, there would be few who could rival them. Yet none dared unleash their full 10-star might. To do so would invite the wrath of the realm's restrictions and certain death. So they struck with everything they could safely wield. Wu Jie, however, remained unbothered. With a single hand he faced all 6. The divine patterns he summoned were simple, just a handful of lines forming rudimentary structures. Yet when these patterns manifested, their power surged like a tidal wave, effortlessly deflecting every attack. At the same time, his transformation continued. His body grew heavier, denser, more terrifying. He rolled his neck slowly, savoring the sensation. "Amazing," he murmured. "This feeling, truly amazing." Then his gaze sharpened, locking onto the 6 prodigies. "You little worms, how should I cook you? Steam you alive, or braise you until nothing remains? Your ancestors would slap you for that mouth." Ling Han snapped. He leapt back, drawing his bow in a single fluid motion. A streak of annihilating force tore through the air. The annihilating Dragon Star arrow! Pa! Wu Jie raised 2 fingers and caught the arrow. Between them, the scene froze. The arrow that could tear through mountains faster than the blink of an eye, held still as if it were nothing more than a toy. Wu Jie grinned, his eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "Interesting," he said. "Had my grasp of the heavens been any weaker, that might have struck me. But then, look!" Shenzhua cried out, "Blood!" A thin stream of blood seeped from between Wu Jie's fingers. His expression darkened instantly. "This body is still too fragile. Xiangguo's eyes lit up with realization. His understanding of regulations is terrifying, but his body hasn't improved. He's still limited to Mountain River tier strength, He Tao added. We can defeat him. The six exchanged glances and nodded. Each of them possessed an unyielding will. Even in the face of death, none wavered. Wu Jie sneered. And what of it? He said coldly. Before my regulations, what resistance can you possibly muster? He raised his hand. Boom! The divine patterns across his body ignited, transforming into countless chains of light that lashed outward like venomous serpents. The six prodigies scattered instantly, their movements swift as lightning. Even with equal power, Wu Jie's superior grasp of the Dao elevated his combat strength to a terrifying level. Ha! Wu Jie laughed, his voice echoing like a demon's roar. To him, these six were nothing but insects. Ling Han, however, did not relent. Arrow after arrow flew from his bow, each one forcing Wu Jie to remain cautious. For all his mastery, his physical body remained a weakness. A single direct hit could inflict severe damage. And that was their opening. Green bamboo ambush! Shen Jue shouted. Her glabella split open, and from it emerged a tiny bamboo shoot. In an instant it expanded, growing, twisting, becoming a massive, flexible bamboo that filled the battlefield without being constrained by space. Shua! Its leaves trembled. Thousands of leaves fell, transforming midair into razor-sharp bamboo swords that surged toward Wu Jie like a storm. Purple flames, Xiangguo roared. Divine fire erupted from his body, forming a blazing lion wreathed in violet flames. With a thunderous clap of his hands, the lion lunged forward, its roar shaking the heavens. Surging black water. He Tao howled. One eye snapped shut, the other gleaming with dark light. From his body poured a raging black river, surging forward with unstoppable force. One by one, the six king tiers revealed their ultimate techniques. No one held back. To hesitate now was to die. Boom! Divine radiance erupted, flooding the battlefield as their combined attacks surged toward Wu Jie like the wrath of heaven itself. The palace trembled beneath the clash of overwhelming forces, as if even the ancient stones feared the storm unfolding within. Six king-tier elites unleashed their full might, their attacks blazing like meteors descending from the heavens. In theory, no one beneath the Eternal River tier could endure such a combined assault. No one, unless their body defied the natural order like Ling Han's. Yet Wu Jie was no ordinary opponent. Just as the torrent of power neared him, he moved with eerie calm. The countless divine chains coiling around his body suddenly retracted, twisting and interweaving into a dense, radiant sphere, a perfect cocoon of defense. Pang! 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 The palace rang with explosive impacts. The attack struck the sphere head-on, unleashing waves of energy that rippled through the air like thunder. But when the dust settled, the orb of divine chains remained untouched, not even a crack. If their combined force couldn't break through that barrier, then harming Wu Jie was nothing more than a distant dream. A sinister chuckle echoed. Heh heh! Abandon your futile resistance. Wu Jie's voice dripped with arrogance as he hovered within the sphere like a god above mortals. Before my absolute power, you are nothing more than ants crawling beneath my feet. His tone turned disdainful, almost amused. You should feel honored to die by my hand. Once I stood as an Eternal River tier elite. Back then, I couldn't even be bothered to crush insects at the heavenly body tier. And yet now, I will personally end your lives. Is that not a glory beyond measure? But before his laughter could fade, another voice rose, clear, sharp, and utterly fearless. Ha! Ling Han laughed as if he had just heard the greatest joke in the world. In the future, I'll be slaughtering saints as if they were livestock. So why don't you obediently stretch out your neck and let me chop it off? I'll grant you an even greater glory than you can imagine. The air froze. Wu Jie's expression darkened instantly, his gaze turning icy. Impudent brat, he said coldly. It seems the original owner of this body harbored deep hatred toward you. Even now, that killing intent lingers. Ling Han merely shrugged, his tone casual. Oh, I only gave him a beating before. If you're interested, I can give you one too. The insult struck like a blade. Wu Jie's face twisted, fury surging within him. Though he had once stood above countless realms, beyond even the need to acknowledge cultivators of the Mountain River tier. This insolence ignited a fire he could not ignore. He wanted, no, he needed to crush Ling Han. But before he could act, Shen Jue and the others struck again. A second wave of attacks erupted, forcing Wu Jie back into defense. Though his soul carried the memory of an eternal river-tier elite, his current body could not match that former glory, and Ling Han had been waiting for exactly this moment. He did not join the second assault. Instead, he stood silently, gathering every ounce of his strength, his gaze locked onto Wu Jie's shifting defenses. The instant the divine chains unraveled, he moved. The ultimate arrow was released. This was his only chance. Even with his astonishing recovery, he knew the truth. Such a technique could not be used again in quick succession, and his opponent was no fool. There would be no second opportunity. At the same time, all of you die. Wu Jie roared as the sphere of chains dissolved, transforming instantly into a storm of deadly threads. Countless divine chains lashed outward like venomous serpents, piercing toward Ling Han and the others. Right after unleashing their strongest attacks, their defenses were at their weakest. Poo-poo-poo. Blood erupted into the air. Shen Jue and the 4 other king tiers were struck without mercy. Arms, legs, torsos, each was pierced through as if their bodies were paper. Crimson sprayed across the battlefield, staining the palace floor. And in that exact instant, Ling Han's arrow flew. Yet he too was struck. The divine chains pierced into his flesh as he released the arrow. He did not dodge, did not evade, because he could not afford to. But his body was no ordinary body. Though the chains penetrated his flesh, they could not shatter his godly bones, nor pierce clean through him. Shoo! The arrow shot forth like a beam of divine light, carrying with it Ling Han's will, his resolve, and the hopes of everyone present. It was speed beyond comprehension. Ah! Wu Jie's scream tore through the palace. The arrow struck his left shoulder, and in a burst of devastating power it obliterated it entirely. His arm fell lifelessly to the ground. Blood surged like a fountain from the ruined shoulder. Had he not instinctively shifted the arrow's trajectory with his divine chains, that strike would have pierced his heart and ended him. Brat! I will kill you. His roar was filled with both fury and shock. To think, he had nearly died at the hands of a mere mountain river tier cultivator. The humiliation burned like poison in his veins. Shoo! The divine chains recoiled, dragging Ling Han toward him. At the same time, 7 more chains surged forward, aiming directly at Ling Han's limbs and vital points. But Ling Han had nothing left. The ultimate arrow had drained him. Even with his enhanced recovery, he needed time he did not have. He could not defend. Pooh! The 7 chains struck him without mercy. Blood sprayed into the air once more. Yet Wu Jie's expression changed. Ling Han had been completely defenseless, and yet the chains still failed to pierce through him entirely. They could not deal fatal damage. What kind of monster are you? Wu Jie muttered, disbelief flashing across his face. If he still possessed his peak strength, he could crush Ling Han with a single flick of his hand. But now, he could only rely on the power of regulations, and his current cultivation was too weak to fully wield them. If he summoned power beyond his level, his own body would collapse first. Thus his chains, though devastating to Shen Jue and the others, could only inflict limited harm upon Ling Han. Humph, then I'll tear you apart piece by piece. Wu Jie's voice turned cold, merciless. With a flick of his hand, he sent Shen Jue and the others flying. Peng! 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 Their bodies slammed into the palace walls, leaving cracks spidering across the ancient stone. And then, all of Wu Jie's divine chains surged toward Ling Han. If one strike wasn't enough, then he would grind him down slowly, like ants devouring an elephant. Pooh-pooh. The chains struck again and again. Ling Han, barely recovered, was battered relentlessly, his body tossed like a rag doll. Blood covered him. His once unyielding figure became a crimson silhouette. Shen Jue and the others lay gravely wounded, unable to rise, unable to help. Ha! Wu Jie's laughter echoed wildly through the palace, filled with both the madness of the mysterious being and his own personal hatred. Ling Han had humiliated him before. Now he would repay it 100-fold. Yet even as the chains tore into his flesh, Ling Han endured. Silently, stubbornly, he continued to recover his strength. He waited for one final chance. If none came, he would retreat into the Black Tower. He could even cast out the notionless saint, using it as a desperate gambit to shock his enemy. But for now, he endured. To Shen Jue and the others, however, the outcome seemed inevitable. Ling Han was being crushed. They themselves were on the brink of death. Defeat loomed like an inescapable shadow. They still possessed trump cards, but this realm forbade power at or above the Sun-Moon tier. To use them would only invite death from the realm's own suppression. A different executioner, but the same end. Was there truly no way out? Their minds raced, searching desperately for even the faintest glimmer of hope. And then a voice thundered through the palace. "Hey, sinking shade, old demon, you've finally shown yourself." The sound was like a bolt of heavenly thunder, shaking the entire structure to its core. Ling Han and the others froze. Another presence? Hope ignited once more in their hearts. At this moment of despair, even the slightest variable could turn the tide of fate.